people,
Yeah.
than because they're the ones that create the image, whatever it might be, And I'm getting older and have a family of my own.
When Ricky Nelson's plane crashed on a frigid December day in 1985, the news rapidly moved on to the next topic. Most people assumed Ricky died bankrupt, his life plagued by debts, a nasty divorce, and the pressures of a fading limelight. The guy who once dominated American living rooms and radios was, in the end, just another sad celebrity who left nothing except old tunes and unpaid bills. Or so they thought. Because a single piece of paper, concealed in a dusty box among legal paperwork and court rulings, altered everything. It transformed what appeared to be a calamity into a narrative of surprising restoration and prosperity. It converted 4 children who expected to inherit nothing but debt into millionaires. It transformed a dwindling family heritage into a peaceful empire. But what about the road there? It was horrible. Court disputes may be bitter. Family betrayals. A secret will that manifested just in time. Lawsuits involving decades of unpaid royalties, as well as a stunning twist that left one son with nothing, while the rest of the family inherited a wealth that made them fabulously rich. Today, we will reveal the true tale behind Ricky Nelson's secret riches. How did America's first reality family go from almost losing everything to being wealthy following Ricky's death? And why was one boy left out of it all? Stay tuned, for the narrative isn't done. It's only getting started. Ricky Nelson was America's golden boy long before he ever picked up a guitar on stage. Ricky was born on May 8, 1940, to musician Ozzie Nelson and actress Harriet Hilliard, and his life has never been private. While other children played in their backyards, Ricky played in recording studios and sound stages, surrounded by cameras and screenplays. At the age of 8, he joined his brother David on the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, turning family dinners into rehearsals and trips into episodes. The Nelsons were more than simply a family. They were America's first reality family, living in a spotlight so intense that it blurred the distinction between fiction and truth. Ricky's modest grin and steady delivery endeared him to audiences, and by the age of 10, he had become well known. However, beneath the polished facade was a youngster who suffered quietly. Ricky had severe asthma, which caused him to gasp for air as other children rode their bikes outside. He spent lengthy days indoors, reading, listening to music, and seeing the world from a distance. The quiet observation transformed into the serene charm that people saw on TV. But within, he was a lonely youngster striving to feel normal. His parents handled everything, even his finances and friendships. Despite earning more than most adults, Ricky received just a tiny stipend from Ozzie, who was keen to keep him grounded. But Ricky was quickly realizing that celebrity was more than just lights and acclaim. It was a business, and he was the product. Ricky Nelson was no longer a kid star by the time he was a teenager. He was America's adolescent love, the face everybody trusted, the guy everyone thought they knew. But behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting, and Ricky was about to embark on a tornado of music, money, and disobedience that would permanently alter his life. Ricky Nelson, a 17-year-old, performed something historic in 1957. Standing on the set of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, he played I'm Walkin', a Fats domino smash on national television. The next day, adolescent girls throughout America were swooning, and record stores couldn't keep the song in stock. It sold more than 1 million copies practically instantaneously. Ricky was no longer merely a television celebrity. He was a true musical sensation. Ricky, with his clean-cut appearance, gentle voice, and calm confidence, rose to prominence as the face of Young Cool. But underneath that placid facade, he was entering a new world of celebrity, money, and fast living. His debut album, Ricky, peaked at #1, becoming him the youngest artist to do so at the time. His tune, Poor Little Fool, became the first song to top the newly created Billboard Hot 100 list. However, Ricky's achievement was not just due to luck. His father, Ozzie, foresaw the future before everyone else. Instead of sending Ricky to perform on other shows, Ozzie ensured that his son sang a new song at the end of his family's weekly TV broadcast, exposing his music to millions of people. It was such a clever marketing strategy that it transformed the family sitcom into a music launchpad, propelling Ricky's songs into the charts every time the credits rolled. Between 1957 and 1962, Ricky had 20 songs in the top 40, a feat only matched by Elvis Presley at the time. He was making a lot of money, signing $50,000 contracts with rights over his songs and record covers, an unheard-of arrangement for a youngster. But as his popularity grew, so did the demands. Behind the scenes, Ricky was transitioning into maturity quicker than anybody anticipated. Surrounded by parties, fast vehicles, and a desire to break away from his family's strict control over his image. The immaculate young star the world saw was going to change, paving the way for decisions that would create his fortune and his ruin. Ricky Nelson, at the age of 21, believed he had discovered the perfect match. On Christmas Day 1961, he met Kristen Harmon, 16, the gorgeous daughter of football great Tom Harmon and actress Elise Knox, as well as the sister of actor Mark Harmon. On the outside, it appeared to be Hollywood's perfect couple, young, renowned, and accustomed to the limelight. But despite the dazzling photographs and red carpet grins, danger was developing. Kristen became pregnant, and under pressure from her Catholic parents, Ricky and Kristen married on April 20th, 1963, in a ceremony that focused on family expectations rather than love. Ricky, who was not Catholic, had to sign documents vowing to raise their children in the religion. What was supposed to be a celebration rapidly turned into a staged show for the cameras and reporters. Their lifestyle was as rapid as their popularity. Ricky and Kristen had never learned to say no to spending on designer clothes, fancy automobiles, or extravagant holidays. Ricky was used to his father controlling his finances, and Kristen was used to a comfortable existence, so they went on a shopping binge they couldn't afford. Ricky's success cooled off in the mid-1970s, but his expenses did not. To keep up, Ricky toured regularly, playing concerts to pay for elite schools, fancy mansions, and increasing debts, while Kristen desired him to return home more frequently, causing friction and loneliness on both sides. They attempted to maintain the family image by appearing together on The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, but the pressure to pretend everything was fine further worsened the fissures. Behind closed doors, their chats devolved into squabbles, and the Hollywood ideal descended into a gradual, terrible nightmare of emotional estrangement and financial devastation. By the time the divorce papers were filed, Ricky Nelson's once impressive marriage had turned into a cautionary story of fame, love, and a lifestyle that drained all he worked for, leaving him with emotional scars and a financial disaster that would plague him for the remainder of his life. As the 1960s progressed into the 1970s, Ricky Nelson was keen to escape the shadow of his adolescent star status. Determined to establish himself as more than a clean-cut TV personality, he eliminated the Y from Ricky, renaming himself simply as Rick, and founded the Stone Canyon Band. He was ready to embrace the new wave of country rock years before it became popular, bringing on young, ambitious musicians who believed in the sound he was pursuing. But innovation came at a high cost. Ricky went from headlining sold-out stadiums to playing in tiny clubs for a fraction of his former earnings. He battled to achieve respect in an industry that still regarded him as the youngster from Ozzie and Harriet. Albums like Rick Sings Nelson and In Concert revealed a fresh, real sound. But sales were low, leaving Ricky struggling to keep his vision alive while his finances deteriorated. The lowest blow occurred on October 15, 1971, at Madison Square Garden. Rick was invited to perform at a rock and roll revival performance, excited to offer his new songs. But when he took the stage and sang Honky Tonk Women, he was booed by a throng who only wanted the old songs. Some said the booing was not for him, but Rick took it personally. That night shattered something within him. However, from that humiliation, a spark sprang. Rick turned his anguish into Garden Party, a raw, emotional song that proclaims, "You can't please everyone, so you've got to please yourself." It was an unexpected smash, reaching number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 and earning gold, momentarily resurrecting his career. But the resurgence did not last. Follow-up singles failed, record labels lost interest, and Rick ended up performing at amusement parks and tiny venues to make ends meet. The renown that had once made him untouchable now seemed like a burden on his neck, pulling him further into debt and emotional weariness. Rick Nelson's ideal of artistic independence came at the expense of his financial stability, transforming him from a once famous figure into a guy silently striving to keep his life and his music alive. By 1985, Rick Nelson was weary. His divorce from Kristen had devastated him emotionally and financially, leaving him with hefty legal fees and child support for his 4 children. Nonetheless, he refused to give up on performing, even as venues became smaller and demands increased. But there was one problem. Rick despised flying. Still, he refused to travel by bus, so he purchased a second-hand 1944 Douglas DC-3, expecting that it would provide him with freedom while also saving him money. The plane formerly belonged to Jerry Lee Lewis, but it experienced technical problems. Engines stopped, components broke, and the band frequently had to push the plane to keep it going. Crew members were afraid, but Rick persevered, motivated by the urge to keep performing in order to survive. Rick, his fiancée, Helen Blair, and his band boarded an aircraft bound for Dallas for a New Year's Eve gig on December 31st, 1985. Mid-flight, smoke filled the cabin, forcing the pilots to fly blind. Moments later, the jet crashed in a field outside DeKalb, Texas, and exploded into flames. Rick, Helen, and 5 others died instantaneously. He was just 45. Rick died, leaving behind over $1 million in debt and no will to safeguard his children. His ex-wife, Kristen, tried to seize control of the estate, preparing for a formal takeover. However, an unexpected twist emerged. Rick's brother, David Nelson, produced a concealed will signed only 4 months before the disaster. It identified Rick's 4 children as heirs: Tracy, Gunnar, Matthew, and Sam, with David serving as executor. Kristen was left out, as was Helen, who died beside him, and Rick's mother. But the shock did not end there. When Rick disclosed that he had another kid, Eric Jude Crew, from a previous affair, a legal battle started. Rick disputed paternity and left Eric with nothing, resulting in another bitter legal fight. While the world mourned a legend, Rick's family was thrown into disarray, laying the groundwork for a battle for a fortune no one knew existed. Rick Nelson's narrative was never only about celebrity, music, or sorrow. It was about a kid who grew up in the spotlight, a young man who struggled for his music, and a father who attempted to persevere when the world was ready to go on. He suffered overwhelming debts, grief, and a ruthless profession that frequently regarded him as a commodity rather than a person. But in the end, Rick left more than just bills and litigation. His concealed will, discovered by his brother, assured that his 4 children would receive his actual legacy, the wealth contained inside his music. Decades of unpaid royalties and underreported revenues from radio plays, re-releases, and TV replays transformed an apparently insolvent estate into a goldmine. Court settlements totaled millions of dollars, surprising even the court, and digital platforms later ensured that Rick's music continued to make money long after his death. His children, who had expected to inherit little, found themselves heirs to a fortune that grew over time, making the Nelson family quietly prosperous thanks to Rick's immortal music. One son, Eric, was left with nothing, a reminder of Rick's convoluted and sad existence that money could never change. Rick Nelson's true impact extends beyond the songs that continue to be played or the popularity that once defined him. It demonstrates how, even under difficult circumstances, the art you make can protect your family's future long after the limelight has faded.